Well, hello, everyone. This is Mitchell Moe, Extension Agent here at the University of Tennessee and Tennessee State University Extension Office in Murfreesboro, and bringing you this morning the first in our summer and our spring and summer series that we're calling the Yard Smart series. So this is episode 1 of our Yard Smart series, and the title of this little presentation I'm going to make to you this morning is Be a Skeeter Beater in Your Own Yard. And we're going to be talking about things that you can do to help maybe minimize mosquito populations in your particular backyard. I don't think there's any question that we don't like mosquitoes, and we don't like them for a couple of different reasons, and maybe a very significant reason is that mosquitoes that we encounter in Tennessee, are capable of transmitting diseases. They can carry diseases, transmit diseases to people and animals, things like West Nile virus or Eastern equine encephalitis or the Zika virus. Now, there's typically not a great number of mosquito or a number of cases of mosquito transmitted diseases on an annual basis in the state of Tennessee. But there is the potential there. So that's a reason to be concerned, I guess, and a reason to not want mosquitoes to occupy the same spaces that we do. But another primary reason, though, I think, is the likelihood that it is very possible and entirely likely, highly likely, that we can be bitten by mosquitoes and suffer from those itchy mosquito bites. So that in itself is probably enough reason to encourage a lot of us, to motivate a lot of us to try to do something to help minimize mosquito populations and help minimize the chances that we may be bitten by mosquitoes. Now, mosquitoes can certainly cause a fair amount of misery for some people, but don't be like the young man in this picture right here. Don't look totally defeated and just like you've totally given up, because you don't have to give up yet, because you do have options and you can fight back and minimize the mosquito populations immediately around your home, around your backyard, even in your neighborhood, and then take away at least diminish the likelihood of you coming into contact with mosquitoes. But before we get into talking about what some of those options are, maybe it would be interesting to share with you what I call fun mosquito facts. You can very possibly use these facts to entertain and amaze your friends and your relatives at family gatherings, backyard cookouts, etc. this year. Probably not, but at least you're going to know them anyway, so you can try. First thing is there are multiple species of mosquitoes found in Tennessee. Not just one, there's several different. A couple of very common ones that we encounter in the state include the southern house mosquito that you see pictured here, and also the Asian tiger mosquito that you see pictured here. And it's called that tiger mosquito simply because of the lighter markings, the dark color, the light markings that you see present on it here. All mosquitoes, regardless of the species, require water in order to reach the adult phase. So this graphic illustrates the stages of life that a mosquito goes through. Their eggs hatch in water. They may be laid in water, but not always laid in water. There's some that don't necessarily lay them in the water, but all their eggs hatch in the water. Then they go through the larval stages. Those eggs hatch, and so the larvae emerge, and they're little wiggly critters, wigglers, that's what they're called when they're in the water like that. And they go through their different larval stages, and then they go through the final stage before becoming an adult. They turn into a pupa, they pupate, and then the adult mosquito emerges. I don't know how many folks are aware of this, but only the female mosquito bites animals or people. And the reason that she does this is she has to have a blood meal in order to ensure that the eggs that she lays are viable. Male mosquitoes feed only on plant juices, on nectar and such as that. And female mosquitoes will also, consume plant nectar, fluid from plants when they're not having a blood meal as well. Some mosquitoes are anthropophilic, and that means that they preferentially feed on humans. They'll bypass animals to come by to human, while others are just the opposite. They're zoophilic, and they will bypass humans to go feed on animals. It's true that some people are bitten more frequently than others. How often have you heard someone say, or maybe you say it yourself, that I can't go outside in the summertime because these mosquitoes eat me up, whereas Bob over here, he goes outside and mosquito hardly ever bothers him. So why is that? Why do mosquitoes seem to be attracted to some people more than others? And I found this graphic. This is from the McGill Office for Science and Society. That kind of illustrates maybe how a female mosquito would track a potential meal. And probably the first cue is that the mosquitoes, and the female mosquitoes especially, they can detect the carbon dioxide that humans and animals emit just during their normal respiration process. So she detects, and this may be a little bit hard to see. I'll try to kind of point this out, but if you can follow the pointer here on the screen, the female mosquito, she detects a carbon dioxide plume. So she says, there's a potential blood meal for me out there. So she follows along the plume, and she loses it. So just like you're taught to do, if you're trying to search for something, you get into the vicinity of an area where you think something ought to be, you can't find it, so you start casting back and forth, going back and forth, seeing if you can't pick that trail up again. And so she casts back and forth, she picks the trail up again. Now so she's back here at point A. And she's following the plume again, and then she moves up to point C, and there she kind of visually identifies a potential target ahead. So she moves a little bit closer to that target, but this potential target does not give her what are called host cues. She's not detecting the level of heat, the amount of moisture, that kind of thing that lets her know that this potentially is a meal for me, or at least a target where I can receive a meal. So then she goes back to tracking the CO2 plume. So here she is again, she's tracking the CO2 plume. She moves on here, she gets to point E, and this is where she starts to detect what are called the host volatiles, or the host skin volatiles. People and animals, we have these substances that our bodies emit, and they're present on our skin. And the mosquitoes can perceive these, they can smell these things. They're called volatiles. They include things like lactic acid, ammonia, acetone, and maybe some others. The mosquito recognizes those as being cues or clues that this is indeed a potential meal for me up ahead. So she follows those skin volatiles, and then she gets close enough to the potential target, and then she can detect, there's enough heat coming off here. There's moistures there. It's got the volatiles. So this is probably a genuine target for me. So then she goes ahead and she lands on that target, and she begins to probe or try to find a good place for her to feed to get this blood meal. So why some people maybe seem to be more attractive to mosquitoes than others? Well, because some folks maybe emit more of these volatiles from their skin than do others. So those that emit greater levels of lactic acid or ammonia, acetone, etc., could be more easily detected and tracked by mosquitoes. And also I point out that since mosquitoes do feed on nectar, that scents that have a flowery aroma to them, they can also maybe serve as an attractant. So you might want to avoid wearing any kind of lotions or perfumes, deodorants, etc., that have any kind of a flowery or a flower-like aroma to those. Anyway, you may encounter 3 different types of mosquitoes here in Tennessee, and those 3 types are the permanent pool, the floodwater, and the container. Permanent pool mosquitoes are those that use a permanent or a semi-permanent body of water as a breeding site. Permanent body of water or semi-permanent body of water is one that it's going to be there for 3 weeks or longer. And those are things like, swamps and marshes, ponds, lakes, maybe waste treatment lagoons, etc., things like that. So these mosquitoes lay their eggs directly on the water. The eggs hatch. They go through the different phases of the life cycle, and then they become adult mosquitoes. Now, these don't travel an extremely long distance in search of a blood meal. Typically, they're going to be in the neighborhood of a mile or maybe a little bit more than that, their radius from their aquatic environment, out searching for a blood meal. So they don't travel great distances. Now, the second kind, the floodwater mosquito, these females, they lay their eggs in moist soil, which may be above the water line, or an area that was flooded. The water receded some, but the soil line there is still moist, a lot of moisture in the soil. So she lays her eggs there. Comes another hard rain, and so where she laid her eggs now is submerged. So the eggs are in the water. They hatch, and they go through the life cycle. and then in a few days, those newly hatched eggs become adult mosquitoes. Now they're going to go out and travel a relatively long distance, up to several miles, in search of a blood meal. So these, you don't necessarily have to be, right next door to a floodwater site in order to be bothered by floodwater mosquitoes. And the third type are those container mosquitoes. And the container mosquitoes are the ones that we'll call those backyard mosquitoes, or your home yard mosquitoes, because they'll breed in just very, very small quantities of water compared to the others. They're the kind of water that the amount of water you'd find in containers. A couple that you see pictured here. They lay their eggs in those small quantities of water. The eggs hatch, they go through the life cycle, and the adults emerge. And they typically don't travel very long distances in search of a food meal or a blood meal either. Maybe a city block would be the range of their travels. If there's enough food source in the backyard there where they were bred, they might not even leave the yard. Very often, it's entirely likely that the mosquitoes you'll encounter in your backyard during the summer could be this Asian tiger mosquito, as pictured right there. And one last thing to point out about mosquitoes is that most of the mosquito bites, or the mosquitoes feed most aggressively, I guess, in the early morning time or the late evening time period. Now, you may find it cases where if you're in a shady area in the middle of the day where there's a mosquito population there, they may certainly bite you then. But typically, adults hang out in dense vegetation during the middle part of the day, or maybe other areas, protected areas when they're not feeding. You just kind of hang out there until the early morning time, the late evening time comes, and it's time for them to go out and feed again. So what are things that you can do, though, to control mosquitoes, minimize mosquito populations in your backyard? Well, since the container mosquitoes are the ones that we call the backyard mosquitoes, these are the ones you can have the biggest effect on. And since all mosquitoes have to have some standing water in order to breed in order to complete their life cycle, anything that you can do to take away potential breeding sites out of your backyard is going to help minimize their populations. And you can see in this graphic, potential breeding sites or areas that can hold water, that can serve as breeding sites for these container mosquitoes. It doesn't take a lot of water. Something is seemingly innocent as a clogged gutter. You've got a lot of leaves in the gutter, they get wet, and they may not, the water will stand there some, but it doesn't even have to be a lot of water standing there. Just a mass of this very wet vegetation can provide enough moisture for some of these backyard mosquitoes to breed in. And so that can be a source or a breeding area in your own backyard. Water that collects in old tires laying around, that's another potential breeding site. Water that collects in flower pots outside, or those can provide enough water for mosquitoes to breed in the backyard. Even a hollow section of a tree that will collect water, that can be a breeding site for these backyard mosquitoes. Swimming pool covers, boat covers, any kind of vehicle covers that have a depression in them that will hold water can serve as a potential breeding site. So the idea is that to minimize those mosquito populations in your backyard, you want to take away those potential breeding sites. So you want to eliminate those areas of standing water. Kiddie pools, maybe sure you're not going to put your kid out there in water that looks like that, but some folks may have large dogs for pets, and they like to get in the water and cool off. If you don't change that water regularly, it can become a breeding site for mosquitoes. Same thing about bird baths and just anything that can hold water out there. Anything that does hold water that you're going to keep water in, like in a bird bath, like pet feeders, like livestock watering troughs, things like that. It's a good idea to change that water pretty frequently so that you can minimize the chances of it becoming a mosquito breeding area. Even depression out in your yard, lawn, or the landscape, maybe from vehicular traffic. Maybe somebody parked their car on the edge of the driveway, the wheel dropped off, and it was kind of wet and made depression there. Any place that can hold water can be a potential breeding site for some of these backyard mosquitoes. So the idea is to eliminate those. Take away those potential breeding sites, and then if they don't have a breeding site, then the population is not going to be nearly so high there. Now, I will say that it's probably more effective if you and your neighbors will do this together, because some homes are built relatively, not relatively close, very close together, and you only have just a matter of a few feet separating one backyard from another backyard. And so you can do everything right in your backyard, but if your neighbors nearby don't take the same steps, then those mosquitoes, since they will travel, these backyard container mosquitoes will travel up to a city block or more, then it's just almost the same as you have them in your backyard. Your neighbor has them in your backyard, and they can certainly come visit you. When you cannot eliminate bodies of water, if there are, let's say, a retention pond or some kind of a water management feature this on your property, or you're located next to, or there's a large, for whatever reason, that there's some container, some body of water that where you can't get rid of it. There are things that you can use to help prevent mosquitoes from completing their life cycle. What we see pictured here are things called mosquito dunks or mosquito bits or crumbles. They use actually it's an organism. It's called a BT organism. It's Bacillus thuringiensis israelensis, and this organism, and it's packaged in these things like these little donut-like objects called dunks or the crumbles. That organism will keep a mosquito larva from completing its life cycle. It will not let it turn into an adult. So if the eggs that are laid never become adults, then you're reducing the population of adult mosquitoes that are out there potentially feeding and looking for a blood meal. So these are safe to use. They can be used in livestock waters. They can be used in fish ponds, other standing bodies of water, and they're available in many garden centers, home improvement stores, hardware stores, etc., that sell pest control counter products. Just like any other pesticide, I mean, this is a pesticide. It's a larvicide, even though it is an organic material that uses this organism. You have directions on how to use them, so you want to follow those directions. Another thing to keep in mind around your own backyard is you don't want areas of vegetation to become overgrown. Along in a fence row, for example, or if there's a vacant lot next to you. If you have any way to prevent that from becoming overgrown, those can serve as at least resting areas for adult mosquitoes during the daytime. And even in your own landscape, you might consider using an insecticide to treat the shrubs and the trees around the home, because those can be potential resting sites for adult mosquitoes during the daytime. This slide right here, this picture shows a fellow using a fogger. A fogger is one way to apply the insecticide. You could also use just a conventional compressed air sprayer to treat the foliage on the trees and the shrubs there close to the house, using pyrethroid type insecticides such as permethrin, bifenthrin, cyfluthrin, even the old malathion. It's not a pyrethroid, but even the old malathion insecticide can have efficacy against mosquitoes, and you'll have some residual benefit. At least it will kill adult mosquitoes for a period of time when they try to use those areas as resting areas. But that's another way to help cut down on adult mosquito populations. Some things that don't work very well in terms of mosquito control in backyards, the bug zappers, the electronic bug zappers that have got the light on that attract bugs to it, sonic devices, citrosa plants, the plant that's known as the mosquito plant. It does not work as a repellent for mosquitoes. B vitamins that people can take, if you have higher B vitamin content, mosquitoes are not going to bite you. That hasn't proven to be effective in research. And also scent baited traps. They're not very effective at repelling mosquitoes, and they should be avoided also. From a personal protection standpoint, so you go through the steps to try to minimize potential breeding sites for mosquitoes in your backyard. Your neighbors do the same thing, but there's always a potential that there could be some of these longer ranging mosquitoes that can come after you. So anytime you're outside, whether it's in your backyard during mosquito season, or especially if you go, out into nature, out in the woods, you go hiking, etc., things like that, there's some awfully good insect repellents that you could use on your person. Here's an example of one. Here's another example. These both use the common active ingredient DEET. DEET has been around a long time. It's been proven to be effective at repelling mosquitoes, and it's very safe for lots of people to use. But again, like any insecticide kind of a product, whether it's a repellent like this or some other form of insecticide, you want to follow your directions when you use that. And there are other materials that are effective besides the DEET, the active ingredient DEET, at repelling mosquitoes. If you'd like to, learn what those options are, you can visit the CDC website to see what their listing is of currently available active ingredients in mosquito repellents, and it's not just mosquitoes, but mosquitoes, ticks, etc., that have proven to be effective. You can see here, this one is, and this just shows a close-up that DEET is the active ingredient. This is a high DEET percentage product here that repels mosquitoes, ticks, and biting flies and other kinds of insects. If a thing to keep in mind when you're using insect repellent, if we're going to be outside, very often we're in the sun, we like to use sunscreen. So you apply the sunscreen first, and then you put your mosquito repellent on top of the sunscreen instead of vice versa to be most effective. It's a good idea to wear light colored clothing when you're in mosquito country because darker colors seem to be more attractive to mosquitoes than lighter colors do. And if you can stand the heat, they'll wear long sleeve shirts and long pants when you're out there. That you're just covering up more body. That means less area you've got to protect with insect repellent, and there's just less exposed skin for a mosquito to come and bite you. So, if we go through and we follow these steps, you can say no to mosquitoes in your backyard this year and use your backyard for your enjoyment and don't have to stay cooped up inside. Folks, if you've got any questions about this or any other topics pertaining, to home horticulture, to lawn and landscape maintenance, etc., you can contact us here at the Extension Service Office. The phone number is 615-898-7710. My name's Mitchell Moat. Here's my email address, mmoat1@utk.edu. You can give us a call there, or you can send an email directly to me or to my coworkers. Their email addresses are available at the Rutherford County Extension Office website. And with that being said, folks, that's all I've got for you. I hope you found this information useful, and keep watching because we'll be having others in this Yard Smart series coming at you later on this summer. All right, have a great rest of the day.